Welcome, everybody. Want to welcome you to this public talk from the Abu Dhabi Institute. Everyone here is for the talk on the World Junior Cup, correct? No, sorry, this is on Waterpipe, cultural pastime or public health threat. My name's Scott Sherman. I'm on the faculty at New York University in New York, but I have a research grant here, a public health research center, so I'm in Abu Dhabi every few months. And we're all here, a group of us, for a conference on the first international conference on waterpipe tobacco research. I'd like to take just a few minutes to set the stage for why are we having the conference. We're going to see a 5-minute video, and then Dr. Wasim Maziak will give the talk tonight. So starting off with just waterpipe tobacco in general, I've been doing tobacco research in California and New York for the last 2 decades. And it's very clear to me how much the epidemic of tobacco use is changing. In New York City, cigarette smoking is going down very steadily, even faster than the rest of the United States. But at the same time, electronic cigarette use is increasing rapidly, and waterpipe tobacco use is increasing equally rapidly. And it's increasing much faster than the evidence for its risks is increasing, and that's part of the reason for this conference. Even worse is the perception when I talk to my daughter and her friends, they would ask me, why are you having a conference? It's water pipes. This is not dangerous. So it's the worst of all worlds where it is dangerous, I would think, and although we'll hear from Dr. Maziak, but the people using it may not perceive it that way. So the conference itself has 4 main objectives. First, as I mentioned, just is to synthesize the research of what is known on the different aspects of waterpipe tobacco, from the epidemiology to the toxicants that people would inhale, the social context of using it, public policies, the whole spectrum. Second is to identify for the people involved in this field, what are the next steps for research and what are the next steps for public policy. Third is to increase awareness, which is one of the reasons behind this talk, as well as behind the video that you'll see in a few minutes. And then fourth was to bring people together to be more than the sum of our individual parts. We anticipate that collaborations will grow out of this conference being held here, and we hope that many of them will be presented at the 2015 World Conference on Tobacco or Health, which will be hosted here in Abu Dhabi in the spring of 2015. It's particularly important to have this conference in this part of the world. As we heard from many of the talks today, in many ways, this rapid growth and use of waterpipe tobacco started here, and people would say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And this is part of our culture. It's equally fitting that we address this issue here to look at strategies, all the aspects of waterpipe use. So speaking on behalf of the Abu Dhabi Institute, it's an honor to have it here. The video itself, you'll see, is about 5 minutes long, funded by the American Legacy Foundation, and it sort of, again, done to raise the public awareness of the issue of waterpipe tobacco and its risks. The American Legacy Foundation, for those outside of the U.S., has been, I would say, the most successful foundation in tobacco control in the U.S. There were a bunch of public service messages before Legacy came on the scene, and they started the Truth campaign, which had these very graphic, direct images in commercials, as well as it being very direct of teens to teens and things like that. It had measurable effect on the prevalence of smoking. Let me switch to Dr. Maziak. He is a professor and chair of the Department of Epidemiology at Florida International University. He has been director of the Syria Center for Tobacco Studies, which was founded in 2002, so this is over a decade old, and it's been continually funded since then. Some people would argue that the measure of somebody's success is how much they annoy people and how many enemies they generate. So let me read from a website commenting on Dr. Maziak. We leave the readers to consider the miserable state of this professional defamer He and his likes, Dr. Eisenberg, Shahada, and Ward, see their pitiful comments on the critique of this flawed World Health Organization report. I would say that's tremendous praise if you're really annoying people that much. And then they go on to actually compliment him without realizing it, said it must be clear that the objectives of all these studies is to provide a scientific basis for policymakers. So with that, I would like to leave you with the scientific basis for policymakers.
I kind of look at it as kind of a different style of smoking versus like smoking a pipe or a cigar, which I'm not a big fan of. But hookahs, I mean, with all the variety of flavors, especially the way it's all set up because it's a water pipe, it's actually really clean, really smooth, something that you can relax on for an hour or two, and it doesn't really affect me either way,
It's like the social thing. You could sit there and like drink, and then, usually when people drink, they say they like to smoke. So it's just like a totally different way of how to socialize and drink and just have a good time.
Smoking hookahs is not healthy. And from what I hear, it's smoking a hookah is equivalent to smoking multiple cigarettes. It's probably not the healthiest choice, and I know that myself, but when you're around it all the time and you've got time to kill, and I smoke hookah.
In June of 2012, the Nicotine and Tobacco Research Journal published a survey of 105,000 U.S. university students and their current tobacco use. Hookah was ranked second only to cigarettes as the most popular form of tobacco used on campus. Dr. Thomas Eisenberg and his research team have conducted numerous studies to understand the health effects of smoking hookah.
One of the things we've learned is that hookah tobacco smoking is a lot more popular than you think it is. So when I tell people, for instance, that in a survey of 105,000 university students in the United States, hookah was second only to cigarettes, they're really surprised.
A lot of our participants don't think that smoking a water pipe is a problem because it's filtered by the water. When you ask them, a lot of them will say cigarettes are much more dangerous.
We start immediately trying to figure out how to make it happen. Months before even it's approved and out in the field, we have an idea of how we're going to do it.
It never occurred to me that we would find what we found. When you smoke a cigarette, it takes you about 5 minutes to smoke a cigarette. You take about 10 puffs on average. Each puff is about 50 milliliters, and so you end up inhaling about 500 milliliters, maybe a liter of smoke, 1,000 milliliters of smoke when you smoke a cigarette. A water pipe, most people will tell you sit down, you relax, you're maybe with friends when you're smoking a water pipe or a hookah. It takes you about 45 minutes to smoke. During that time, they can take as many as 100 puffs, sometimes 150. We've seen a minimum of maybe 60. Each one of those puffs can be about 500 milliliters. So each puff from a water pipe is about the same amount of smoke as you get from an entire cigarette. And if you're taking 100 puffs of a cigarette-sized amount of smoke, then that's about 100 times the smoke that you're getting from a water pipe. Now the means can vary, you could take less, you could take more, but the bottom line is there's a lot of smoke being inhaled during a water pipe tobacco smoking session.
Imagine buying a 1-liter bottle of soda at the supermarket. The volume of that bottle is approximately equivalent to the volume of smoke inhaled from a single cigarette. Now imagine buying 100 of those 1-liter bottles of soda. That amount of smoke is approximately equivalent to the smoke inhaled from a 45-minute hookah smoking session.
And whether it's 60, 80, 100, or even 50 if you want to go lower, that's still dramatically more smoke that's being inhaled. And we know the smoke contains nicotine that causes dependence, carcinogens that cause cancer, volatile aldehydes that cause lung disease, and heavy metals and other toxicants. I think every hookah smoker I've ever spoken to or emailed or had an online conversation with will agree with the statement, hookah smoking is more dangerous than breathing air. Many of them will say, and it's way less dangerous than cigarette smoking. So they're making the comparison. And thus far, of all the data generated in my lab, Dr. Shahade's lab, Dr. Benowitz's lab, every other lab, I haven't seen a single piece of evidence that supports the statement that it's less dangerous than cigarette smoking.
Okay, thank you, Scott, for the introduction, and I'm very grateful for the World Conference to have given me the chance to come here tonight and speak to you. And I'm very also grateful to have the opportunity to visit this wonderful country and enjoy the hospitality of the people of United Arab Emirates. I've had a chance earlier on to enjoy the generosity and hospitality of this country when I represented the Syrian Center for Tobacco Studies as a winner for the Hamdan Award, award for Best Medical Research Institute in the Arab world. So that was very, very kind of a highlight of our career and the work that we've done at the Syrian Center for Tobacco Studies. I've never changed a bit. And my wife always tells me, one day people will know that you don't buy new clothes. So let's talk about the water pipe, and this is our subject today. So it has changed through time, and we don't know actually how it started and who started it. We know that it's centuries old, and we know it's associated with the Middle East or Eastern societies. Most likely it started in the midpoint in the 16th century, and most likely with some other substances than tobacco, because tobacco was introduced to this region in about the beginning of the 17th century. This is how it looks, and this is the main parts of it. This is the coal, where it kind of burns, but it's separated from the tobacco by an aluminum foil. So when the smoker draws air, the negative pressure occurs, and that draws the air through the coal, gets heated, heats the tobacco substance, and then the smoke bubbles through the water to be inhaled by the smoker. That's why it's called hubble bubble, and this is actually underlies that passage of smoke within the water underlies much of the misperception or misconception that water pipe smoking is less harmful than cigarette smoking, because people assume that the water has some kind of filtering effect on the smoke. It's called shisha here in United Arab Emirates. It's called hookah in Western societies, nargile and argile and so forth. It goes by a lot of names. So until the 1980s, I can say that the epidemic was actually on the decline, and you would not see much of hookah smoking even in this region, apart from old men who continued to use the water pipe. So what happened? Why it all of a sudden became really a worldwide craze? We did a very, very simple study where we asked adult hookah smokers at what point of time they started their hookah smoking or water pipe smoking, and we saw that actually most of them, regardless of their age, have started in about the early 90s and during the 90s. So we think that something happened at that point of time or in those years that kind of ignited or made this tobacco use method become more prevalent and more widespread among youth. And we think, let me go back in history, and this is actually how cigarettes used to be hand-rolled. This is in the 19th century. And a big dramatic event happened in the history of tobacco use was when a machine rolling cigarette machine rolling was invented, and while a person or a hand roller cigarette will probably roll about 200 cigarettes per day, the bone sack machine actually can create 200 cigarettes per minute. So that was a momentum in the history of tobacco use that really led to an explosion in use because it industrialized the habit. It made it very much available and widespread. And I equate this moment with the introduction of mass sale, because beforehand, if you remember, tobacco that was used in the water pipe is handmade, prepared. It was raw tobacco, and you squeeze it, you put it with water. It was a kind of lengthy process, and it did not have a lot of flavors and a variety, and you would not have much access to a lot of variety of that tobacco. While when mass sale appeared, all of a sudden becomes everywhere, a lot of variety, a lot of appeal, and I think that helped kind of spread the habit worldwide. So mass sale actually kind of created also that appealing smell and appealing aroma that people a lot of time associate with the water pipe in a pleasant way, that I smell that aromatic smoke and I like it, and that's what draws me to it. Then the social media and internet took over to popularize and glamorize the habit even further. And I give you some kind of examples of that. This is kind of Facebook page where it's called the Hookah Enthusiast Around the World, where people who like hookah and kind of attracted to it or smoke it share their experiences. And I actually monitor some of those sites, and a lot of time actually organize some communal hookah sitting where they will say, for example, anybody in the Los Angeles area, we're kind of convening tonight at this place, and so if you want to come for a nice hookah, come around. They're always also kind of understanding that the hookah actually smokers are mostly the young people and educated people. The hookah industry or the shisha cafe industry tries to appeal to that group by going into the internet. So a lot of time they create something like a blog for hookah enthusiasts, and it's actually not a blog by kind of an enthusiast. It's actually kind of a place where you can buy hookah. So it's not, so all these blogs, all these Twitter accounts, most of them are actually started and run by people who sell hookah tobacco or hookah products and have vested interest in the habit. So the mass sale was the first kind of ignited the availability and widespread of and simplified the preparation process of hookah, and then the internet and social media took over and popularized it more and glamorized it more. So in this situation, the habit went from, this is in the 80s, old men smoking hookah, to the situation today. It's mostly young people, huge numbers are practicing the habit. And wherever you go, not only in the Middle East, actually everywhere, you find those hookah cafes that are very well attended and very overcrowded. So what about the culture? I mean, it's part of the culture, and I remember my father, the Friday was for us the day of hookah. So my father would, on Friday, would put, strangely enough, classical music like Beethoven or Mozart, very, very, very loud, and he would start preparing his hookah and smoking his hookah. So it was, as I grew up, it was part of our weekly ritual, and I had a close experience and contact with it. So it's part of the culture, but as I'm going to show later on, is that our understanding of what is culture and the social benefits or the social aspect of this tobacco use method is not homogeneous, and not everybody perceives culture or the cultural meaning of water pipe smoking in the same way. So I will give you some quotes from actual hookah smokers that really demonstrate best that social benefit or social value that smokers attach to hookah smoking. So this is a smoker who says, this is in London, the nargile is good and fun. When we gather, we smoke nargile, we know it's a gathering of serenity and joy. So it always has this connotation of good time spent in the company of family and friends. This is a quote from a woman in Syria. Says, my husband smokes nargile, and I am waiting for my 4-year-old son to get older so that we can all smoke together. It's kind of, as a parent, it's a horrendous quote. I mean, you wait for your daughters and son to graduate from college or so forth. But again, it's kind of, I make the point to illustrate that is actually perceived as part of the family activity or communal activity and culture. But again, even that aspect is changing and it's dynamic. So for example, these are some of the social association that waterpipe smokers or people perceive waterpipe smoking as related to. This is from a man, a Syrian man. A woman who smokes waterpipe is more desired. Men are attracted to women who smoke waterpipe because they consider them more liberal. This is from a woman in Lebanon. If you vent the smoke in the face of another man or woman, it would mean, I want you. So that's serious stuff. I bet my mom, if she knew that, she would never allow my dad to vent his smoke anywhere. But that's the changing nature of the societal perception and connotation related to this tobacco use method. Even acceptance, we know that is more acceptable than cigarettes, especially for women. And that's actually explained a lot of the widespread among women in this region compared to cigarettes. But even that is not homogeneous and it's not unifaceted. So again, I give some quotes from people who are mostly waterpipe smokers and about the social acceptability. This is a Syrian man who said, I don't like women to smoke waterpipe in public places. We are an Oriental society. We should respect the values. And I bring another actually contradicting kind of testimony of a smoker in London who is a Muslim. And he says, you know that the dangerous element, that forbidden element attached to smoking, you get that with shisha, except it's halal venue, and perhaps more importantly, socially acceptable. So you see that very kind of close linkage to a lifestyle that, or even conviction that is more attuned to the Middle East and the culture of the Middle East. And that's also best presented by a lot of connotation that actually this is our way of living. Cigarettes actually is the best example of the Western way of living, where everything is fast, furious, anxious, stressful. Waterpipe is our way of living because it's relaxed, laid back, we take our time, we talk over, and so forth. And this is, I think, a beautiful picture to depict that. These are the guys are really, really nice guys. But again, it is actually probably related to some aspect of the culture, but these people also belong to this culture. So you cannot really homogenize or unify. This is the cultural aspect of it, so this is actually good or bad. It's quite a diverse and quite a controversial issue. But regardless of all that, if this was an actually harmful thing, I think all the cultural and social connotations cease to kind of make any sense or make any difference. So let's talk about that. We're stuck. So why would we care? I mean, is it close to the culture or not? Why would we care? We would not care if it's not widespread. We would not care if it's not harmful. We would not care if it's not addictive. Because even if it's harmful and widespread, usually if it's not addictive, it's kind of any epidemic or any risk factor tend to be self-limiting because it either affects its people and then people kind of perish, or it's kind of disappears. But when it's addictive, it kind of continues with the same people and spreads to other people. And we should care because actually we don't have the policy tools to confront water pipe smoking. Unlike cigarettes, where we have a century of experience and effective policy, we're caught off guard in terms of water pipe smoking. We don't know really how to deal with it and what to do with it. So I'm going to explain a little bit of those points and to just give some information about why we care about the water pipe. It's not because we're health fanatics and we were described by a lot of internet sites. It's because we care about the people. So is it widespread? I give you a very kind of quick overview of the spread of water pipe among 13 to 15 years old in several Arab countries. So this is boys, and boys will be gray, girls will be blue, and the first couple of bars will be cigarettes and then water pipe. So this is Iraq. Cigarette smoking is below about 5% among boys and girls. Water pipe smoking is above that. This is Oman, boys cigarette, girls cigarette, and then water pipe. This is Yemen, Qatar, and all that. In all these countries in our region, water pipe smoking is more prevalent among women, among girls, and among boys. So it's very widespread, and it reaches a horrendous amount in some of the countries like the West Bank, Jordan, and Lebanon. So it is widespread. Is it harmful and addictive? Let's see some of the research that has been done in this regard. I've told you that, and we've seen from the video that a lot of people kind of have the perception that this is actually less harmful and less addictive than the cigarette. And this is, I quote some of the smokers, water pipe smokers, and he says, when I smoke cigarettes, I know straight away this is bad for me. But when I smoke shisha, I do not feel it is bad for me. And that is because it's cold and it's been through the filter. And you don't see direct tobacco being burned. When you are smoking cigarettes, you can see it burning and you can feel the heat. So this actually touches upon other characteristics of the water pipe smoking that also create that perception that it's less harmful, because the smoke from the water pipe usually is a room temperature, while the smoke from the cigarette is usually hot. So that also kind of creates that perception. It's smooth and cool and not kind of heated and harmful. So how do we know it's potentially harmful? Different lines of evidence point to that. And this is evidence from machine-generated smoke for the water pipe, comparing the water pipe with the cigarette. I'm not going to go into details to the number. I'm just going to draw your attention to the ratio of these very famous toxicants in cigarette tobacco smoke and compare the water pipe with cigarette. Of course, we're comparing a longer session of water pipe with a shorter duration of cigarette smoking. So the ratio for nicotine is 1.7, so more from the water pipe, water pipe compared to the cigarette. The CO is hugely highly delivered in the water pipe compared to the cigarette. And tar also, which is the main carcinogenic substance, it's a conglomeration of substances, is actually 46 times more with the water pipe session than the cigarette. But one can say this is actually machine data. What about actual smokers' data? We want to see if these actually absorbed or delivered to the smoker. This is a study we've done when we compared CO, carbon monoxide, before water pipe session and after, and compared it to carbon monoxide before and after a cigarette smoking. And carbon monoxide, for you who are not in the medical profession or health profession, is a major cardiovascular toxicant. That's why we put actually carbon monoxide alarms in the homes, because if it increases greatly, it can kill people without even feeling it. And you can see actually carbon monoxide is greatly more increased in the water pipes with water pipe smoking compared to cigarettes. And in fact, we've seen several confirmed reports of emergency room admissions because of water pipe smoking session. And I've searched the cigarette literature, I did not see any of that. So there's even in some aspect, additional risk. How about other toxicant exposure? This is a little bit kind of complicated graph, but I'll get you through very easily. This is a study we've done recently in collaboration with the American University of Beirut, where we compared nitrosamines. This is tobacco-specific nitrosamine, and this is a top carcinogen in tobacco smoke, a known carcinogen. And the beauty of nitrosamine is that it's tobacco-specific. So you cannot be exposed to it from the outer environment or from food or from anything. So if you have it in your blood, it comes from tobacco smoke, from no other source. And we compared exclusive water pipe smokers, so they don't smoke anything else, with exclusive cigarette smokers with non-smokers. And for that nitrosamines, we saw that for water pipe smokers, actually it's 5 to 10 times more levels of this carcinogens with water pipe compared to non-smokers. It was less than cigarette smokers, but remember that for this study, for example, the cigarette smokers smoked on average 20 cigarettes per day, while the water pipe smokers smoked on average 1 session per day. But again, it delivers 5 to 10 times more of this known carcinogen to the smoker compared to non-smoker. What about harm to others? A lot of us, being a social phenomena and being a social habit where families practice it in front of their children or together with their children or in a social environment, makes this issue really very, very critical. So what about the harm to others? What about the potential for water pipe smoking to harm others? This is, again, it's a complex slide, but it's very easy to understand. This is particulate matter of the size 2.5. This particulate matter is a known major pollutant in the atmospheric air. And they are very small, and for that, they can penetrate deep into the respiratory system, and they have been shown by several studies to be associated with cardiovascular mortality and lung disease. And this is a room where there's no smoking happens, and this is the level of CO in that room and particulate matter in this room after several sessions of water pipe smoking. And you see the levels are so high, but to give you perspective how high they are, the allowable level of particulate matter 2.5, the 24-hour allowable standard is 35 microgram in cubic meter. And it's something like here. And you see how much more the water pipe produces or emits those kind of particulate matter that are really, really very harmful. So we have some evidence about the harmful potential of water pipe. Is it addictive? Because if it's not addictive, people who will smoke it, once they turn it off, that's it. I mean, it will not affect anybody else. So the addictive side of it is very important. Again, I give you some of the smokers' testimony, and they're not homogeneous. They reflect also a whole continuum on the addictive the syndrome associated with water pipe smoking. So this smoker, for example, says, I don't feel that the nargile fills my need like cigarettes. It's for spending time and entertainment. I don't feel that I'm addicted to nargile, and I could quit nargile anytime. So obviously, this is probably an intermittent smoker who does not really feel that he's addicted and hooked. But look at the other kind of end of the continuum. This is another water pipe smoker. I like to dominate everything, but the nargile has completely dominated me. My happiness is related to the nargile. It is essential for having a good time. I mean, those of us who study dependence or addiction, this is actually the epitome of somebody who's completely controlled and under the influence of an addictive habit. How about nicotine, the addictive substance that we know is the major addictive substance in cigarettes? And this is a study where we bring water pipe. This is done by Dr. Eisenberg. I pronounced it good this time. And he brought water pipe smokers and cigarette smokers, and they're dual smokers. So in one session, they will smoke the water pipe, and the other, they smoke cigarettes. So we can compare the levels in the same individual. And these are 5-minute interval times. And they were hooked to a catheter where blood was withdrawn at 5 minutes interval, looking at nicotine absorption in the case of cigarette and in the case of water pipe. And as you see, there's more abrupt increase in nicotine, blood nicotine associated with smoking a cigarette, but there's more gradual and even more dose delivered by smoking the water pipe. So that's actually demonstrated very efficiently and without unequivocally that water pipe is very efficient in delivering nicotine to the smoker. And we know that nicotine is highly addictive. It's actually more addictive than heroin and cocaine. The relapse rate after nicotine addiction is way higher than any other substance that we know. So it probably is quite addictive. How about feeling withdrawal or craving when you cannot smoke a water pipe? Because that's also kind of one of the behavioral aspects of being addicted on a substance. And these are, again, testimonies from water pipe smokers. If I cannot smoke, I feel restless and tired. When I travel to visit my parents, I do not smoke. Their home environment is not encouraging, and I do not feel an urge to smoke. I crave the nargile from 7 to 10 in the evening. So this is actually a mildly addicted person who only remembers it in part of the day and can go without it accordingly, because it's not really he did not reach that severe level of addiction. To contrast that with, again, the other extreme or the other end of the addiction continuum, sometimes it bothers me. If I want it, meaning the water pipe, I don't just forget about it. I'll do anything just to have it. I don't know why. And this actually, beyond any evidence about nicotine or anything, shows how addictive it can be. And most of these actually only smoke the water pipe, not dual smokers with cigarettes. One potential that we're really very cautious about is that because it's very addictive and it exposes youth to nicotine, once they become hooked, because the water pipe is not accessible as the cigarette, they might go to cigarette. Because if you're feeling craving or withdrawal or you're needing a water pipe and you are in a life situation that you cannot really go and prepare a water pipe and sit and smoke it, you most likely will go to the cigarette. So the highly addicted, we're proposing water pipe addicted people will likely to move to cigarettes and the water pipe be a vehicle towards cigarette smoking. So we wanted to test this hypothesis on a group of young children in Jordan, in Arabic Jordan. So at the beginning of the study, we grouped them into two groups. Those who smoke water pipe only, and those who were naive, tobacco-naïve, so never smoked in their lives. And we followed them through until 3 years later. And we looked at the probability or the risk of becoming cigarette smokers between the two groups. And true enough, the group of water pipe smokers at the beginning were twice as likely to become cigarette smokers 3 years later. And we want to also build more evidence about, for that risk. And so we compared different doses or different frequencies of use of water pipe to the later risk of becoming cigarettes. And we saw that actually this is never smoked water pipe, ever smoked water pipe, smoke water pipe but less than 1 week, and smoke water pipe more than 1 week. And sure enough, this is the risk of becoming cigarette smoker later on. And sure enough, the risk will increase with the dose response, which also kind of holds that our theory that the more addicted people who use it more frequently are the more likely to become or switch to cigarettes. That's a major public health threat, regardless of the harmful and addictive properties of the water pipe. Because if this is such an efficient mean to kind of move people to cigarette smoking, then whatever we're doing is really will not be effective, because they will always use it to kind of bridge to cigarettes. The same thing happens on the other end. So we achieved really good results in convincing cigarette smokers to quit, and in cessation, smoking cessation. And that has been a worldwide phenomenon that is actually, that will lower mortality in the long term more than preventing initiation. So cessation is such an important aspect of tobacco control. And we saw actually that the Waterpipe will ruin those cessation or quit attempts, and in several smokers that we investigated. This is a quote from a cigarette smoker in Syria, and he says, "I quit smoking for more than 6 months. Then I was invited to smoke nargile. After the second puff, I asked for a cigarette, and I started again." So again, from a policy point of view or tobacco control point of view, this is a major threat to cigarette initiation, also to thwarting cigarette cessation. But what are the policy implications of the Waterpipe epidemic? As I said, part of what I described, why we care, is that we're really not ready to, in terms of policies, to face this epidemic. It increased so fast and so quick that we could not manage the research and the finding and the policy to adapt to that tobacco use method. And I'll start there are a lot of things about policies and how they relate to waterpipe smoking. And I start about the depiction or this deceptive labeling on the Waterpipe tobacco package. So this actually packaging says it has no nicotine, no tar, and no tobacco. This is the same thing. It says that 100% taste, but no tobacco, no nicotine, no tar. And our friend Dr. Eisenberg actually studied these products and has shown with using the normal product or the assumed product for Waterpipe that has no tobacco and it's herbal, has nothing, actually they both deliver the same amount of carbon monoxide, which is, as I said, the major cardiovascular risk factor. So it's in fact, but while the nicotine actually is less in that tobacco-free assumed substance. And we know actually nicotine is not that harmful. Nicotine is very addictive, but it's not really the major harm with smoking. This is what we care about actually, not the nicotine. Also, the packaging regulations should deal with mislabeling or misinformation provided on the packaging. They put really anything they want. There's I think, scientific guiding principle behind when they put nicotine 0.05. It has nothing to do with the content or 0.5. So these are like an example. It's been done elegantly also by Tom Eisenberg group, that these are two brands where the nicotine content in this brand is about 10 times more than this brand. So this is the Nakhle flavor, and this is Al-Fakhir. And when they looked at the blood nicotine in smokers, is just the opposite. Actually, Al-Fakhir, who had less nicotine, delivered more nicotine to the smokers compared to the Nakhle. So there's a wide array of regulation that should be implemented to prevent this deceptive descriptors on Waterpipe packages. We also, as I said, it's a policy mismatch, because all what we have about health warning and pictorial warning and banning of any light or mild descriptors on the cigarettes do not apply to Waterpipe, or Waterpipe seems to be really escaping most of those. And if you look at that, this is a packaging of Al-Fakhir that you see first the ingredients, like in a big shrift a little bit, then the components of nicotine, the harmful, assumably components in the kind of smaller font. Then this is this very smallest font about the health warning about the smoking and it's harmful for your health. So you don't really, this will not lead to any helpful information or awareness of smokers, let alone that most of smokers, when they smoke it in the cafe, are not exposed to the packaging. So unless you have health warning actually on the artifact itself, these policies, even the cigarette policies, if we have it on pictorial warning or large health warning, I don't think that will be much or will make much difference with Waterpipe packages. Advertisement, cigarette advertisement, is almost in all Arab countries and all over the world are banned, but Waterpipe advertisement is still allowed, and it's really, again, it's misleading, it's misinforming people, it's even kind of targeting the young and weight-conscious people, that this is actually a diet hookah, and even kind of also trying to play on the religious kind of emotions of people, that is from Timmak li bab as-sama, from your mouth to the gates of heaven. And it's named Al-Fardos, which is like heaven in Arabic. And again, the healthy shisha is almost here, and there's no such thing. So again, banning advertisement for shisha specifically should be a top priority. And we need public health, public awareness. A lot of times we assume that we've done research, we've shown that it's harmful, it's addictive, people should know. I mean, people do not know. We need to repeat the message and speak it loudly and loudly. And the more that we meet people actually and ask even smokers, the more we see that most of them do not have a full knowledge of the harmful effect. This is again from a smoker, Waterpipe smoker in London, who say, I don't see enough advertising to tell me that the real effect of shisha, so I don't really know them. Until then, I'm not gonna stop. So we need more health information, and we need more awareness about the dangerous aspect of shisha smoking. What else? As the e-shisha is now appearing, and as part of the bigger craze of e-cigarettes, we don't know. It's most is unknown. We don't know if this is actually a harm-reduced product or it will sustain even nicotine addiction in the society and lead to more smoking or more tobacco use in the future. So this is I want to alert you about. And by the way, the hookahs, the e-hookahs look mostly like a cigarette. So I think they're kind of trying to benefit from two popular trends by combining them together and saying this is e-hookah. It looks like e-cigarette, but it's called e-hookah and so forth. So these are the main policy implications that we need. We know exactly enough information to start to protect non-smokers as a start. So we need clear indoor air policies to protect non-smokers as we know and we have applied with cigarette smoking. We need to limit minors' access. Nobody asks actually if somebody who's like 13 or 14 years old and orders a hookah in this region, they will not be denied. Although there are laws that limit minors' access to cigarettes. We need to also work about warning labels on Waterpipe smoking and prevent or ban misleading descriptions such as zero tar or low nicotine or mild tobacco. We need to enforce advertisement bans, and we need to help smokers quit by developing new and effective treatment tools for Waterpipe smokers. But we most likely will be faced with this. A lot of people, and I face it everywhere, tell me, yeah, what you're telling me. All people die, whether they're smokers or non-smokers. And my response actually, it comes from a phone call that was received by a friend of mine. And this is from a woman who's 52. I'm 54, by the way. So it says, I've smoked for 30 years. I have emphysema. I'm virtually housebound. I get exhausted walking more than a few meters. I have urinary incontinence, cannot keep urine. And because I cannot move quickly to the toilet, I wet myself and smell. I cannot bear the embarrassment, so I stay isolated at home. Smoking has ruined my life. You should start telling people about the living hell smoking causes while you are still alive, not just that it kills you. And I leave you with this message. Thank you very much.
I couldn't find an answer to my experience. When I smoke a cigarette, I feel that the carbon monoxide is affecting me much more than when I do shisha. A shisha, a session, never gives me a head or spinning head, but a single inhale of cigarette just makes me tipsy or whatever. Mm-hmm. So why is that? Is the paper there, or so that doesn't fit into my chemistry in terms of carbon monoxide getting poisoned. What I feel is sick with the cigarette, but I never get sick with shisha.
Well, are you a shisha smoker and cigarette smoker?
No, I'm not. Any of them. Once a week, a cigarette, or sometimes when somebody invites me, I smoke shisha for about 50 minutes. I never get that feeling from the shisha. I'm questioning what's the inside. Like, it's not like my childhood shisha or nargile. In my childhood, they used the tobacco there. Mm. Right now, it looks like to me some marmalades or something, or it's not the same effect. Mm. I mean,
well, this is your individual experience. I mean, we cannot really generalize based on what you feel. For example, for all of a sudden, if I smoke a couple of puffs from the Waterpipe, I can kind of throw up. So it feels different, but there's no doubt whatsoever that the carbon monoxide delivery of hookah, and this has been shown, this is actually the most consistent fact in Waterpipe research, that it's way more than what you will see with cigarette smoking. So it delivers that. But again, the buzz or the lightheadedness is not only carbon monoxide, because nicotine gives some of that, other toxicants give some of that, and it depends on how deep you inhale, how frequently you smoke, what are your smoking patterns, and also what are your biology. We're all different. Women are not small men. Everybody kind of reacts differently to things, and that's why some people are more prone to smoking, because they don't have that toxic effect from the first inhalation or the first smoke, while others, they feel really aversive. So it's kind of, but in terms of delivery of toxicants, we know exactly what we're talking about.
It is very clear that the carcinogen intake is as high or higher in some cases. Is there also, has there been any studies on the cancer rates in the countries where you see these, or is the, because you show the increase in hookah use, but not in terms of duration or how frequent the smoking was?
It's a very, very good question, and there's several parts of answers to that. Firstly, most of hard outcomes of smoking, such as myocardial infarction, lung cancer, usually appear after about 30 to 40 years of continuous smoking. And the hookah epidemic or the Waterpipe epidemic is relatively new. So there is no sufficient number of people to develop those outcomes, and that kind of really limits our ability to study those hard outcomes. And also, secondly, a lot of Waterpipe smokers do smoke cigarettes, and especially when they're young. They become more loyal to each of them later on, as studies show. But again, if what we are seeing in youth, that kind of transfer from Waterpipe to cigarettes, or that kind of mixed behavior, makes it very difficult to disentangle the effects of two currently. But with more Waterpipe smokers, and that's expected to be the case, and for smoking for a longer period, I think we can start kind of look at those hard outcomes in the same way as we did with the cigarette epidemic.
Would you advocate the Waterpipe as a strategy of harm reduction, likewise the electronic cigarettes in the West?
I don't advocate both of them, either of them, because I don't think that we have the evidence that actually they are harm-reduced products.
But in the light of we having this group, we're going to have exceptional in the environment. We're going to have some people with, for example, some biological addiction, and there is no way to live without this behavior.
Yeah, again, and you have to balance and weigh the benefits to the individual with the benefit to the society as well. So, for example, for the water pipe, there's no way of actually even counting it as a reduced harm product because it's not. We do not really have single evidence that would suggest that people, if they move from cigarette to the water pipe, they'll protect themselves from disease or premature mortality. In the case of e-cigarettes, as I said, we know that it delivers way less
Nicotine.
No, it actually delivers a good amount of nicotine. That's why people buy it, but way less substances. But again, we have not seen that people have used it to quit smoking and they succeeded. A lot of time it leads to dual use, and a lot of time they start with it and even move to cigarettes. Again, there are no hard data about any of that, but these have been an observation by several scientists about this issue. So we don't really, I cannot give you a good opinion on that. But for the water pipe, of course, it's not a harm reduction product.
Okay, thanks.
It does not satisfy any of the criteria for that.
Okay, thanks.
What advice would you give to someone who is trying to reach out to youth through school workshops on the water pipe use?
And spread the word.
Yeah.
Spread the word that this is really not our way of living. A lot of things, whether they're cultural or they're normative or the society is acceptable in the society, does not mean if they're harmful that we should endorse them. We know really enough to tell young people. I mean, I'm a father. I would do everything to prevent my children to try the water pipe or smoke it. Just as a father, if I've never even touched, did water pipe research. Because from what I see, it's really, really clearly associated with harm and addiction and can lead to cigarette smoking. So we should spread the word and kind of be vigilant as parents and as society members to not really endorse that.
Thank you for this lecture. I have a question. Have you done any research, or are you aware of any research that explains why the policymakers in every country, at least in every Arabic country, they're not applying the FCTC and including the nargile in it? Is it only the economic factor that is preventing from doing that?
What do you mean economic factor preventing?
I mean, some of them might consider that cigarettes and nargile, they bring some money to the country, although, I mean, later on, this will translate into more deaths and more...
Well, it's a very complex to convince policymakers in the region in particular for those kind of policies. But again, it has been shown time and time again that there is no policy, there is no economic argument to support smoking. I mean, the best argument of the industry is that our product kills half of its customers. That's why they die young, and they save the country their pensions and late medical health. Who would buy from such an industry that claims that? And they made those claims. It's not like I'm making jokes. They made those claims to several Eastern European countries that no matter what, we're doing good for you economically because most of smokers die and do not cost you much in their older age. So I think there is no economic argument. And in terms of shisha or bars or cafes and stuff, there's been a great backlash and warning that everything will collapse. The hospitality industry will collapse when you ban smoking indoors. Ireland was dependent on the bar industry, and they told them that if you ban smoking in the bars, that will kill our only import and the best import. And it did not happen. Actually, people went more to those venues because a lot of people were not going there because there are smoke. So it really did not happen. None of the doomsday scenarios that the tobacco industry predicted or the owners of those places predicted materialized. Revenues increased in all places that were studied before and after the ban, from California to Ireland to any country in the world. People start going more to those places. It's your job as health advocates in each country to convince the policymakers and kind of get them on board.
I've heard people say that if what we knew or what we know about tobacco now, at least if we know what we know about cigarettes now, And we had known that in 1930 or 1940, when the manufactured cigarettes really came to many countries in the world, we would never have allowed it onto the market, that governments just simply wouldn't have tolerated a new product coming to market that was so dangerous. But we obviously didn't know that then, and it took us all the way to the 1960s to really, through the Surgeon General's report, et cetera, to know that. Are we not seeing this play out now with, the Waterpipe products maybe have historical legacies in this part of the world, but where I'm from, it's not. It's a very new product in the last 5 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. But yet are we not seeing this play out, that a product that we know is potentially of a similar harm to cigarettes, and yet we're letting it come to market? Yeah. Should we not in these countries, rather than taking the comprehensive tobacco control strategy that you're suggesting, which is to some extent let's integrate this part of existing policy options of tobacco control, in countries where we simply do not have this product permeated enough yet, can we not take the approach that the European Union has taken with snus and say, if there's not enough of it, or not a lot of it on the market and not a lot of consumers of it, can we not just ban it from the start? I know it would be difficult to do that here, and part of the reason why it's difficult to find this integration with tobacco control, broader tobacco control policies in this part of the world, is because there's already an established base of users. But in places, I'm thinking, in particularly low-income countries in Africa or Asia or Latin America, where they don't have waterpipe smoke, should we just ban it in the same way as the European Union banned snus?
Well, I totally agree with you, and you probably know more than I am. Humans tend not to be able to learn from their mistakes. We tend to repeat our mistakes over and over again, and it's more like a catch-22 here, because I agree with you. The earlier you kind of address the problem, the easier you can deal with it. The later, the harder. But again, the earlier, when it's really in its infancy, it will not alert a lot of people to raise any awareness or think about it, or policymaker to think that this is an important issue. So unless it becomes widespread, people tend to start to react, and people suffering from it, people start to react, and then at that stage it'll be harder. And it's amazing, actually, in the US, if you can look at the beginning of 20th century, a lot of states had actually laws that banned the sales of cigarettes. These same states now allow them, because the more profit, the more users, the stronger the industry, the more lobbying it can influence or put on politicians, and the more obstructive can be for public health. So yeah, it's amazing that we would love to go back to some of the earlier days when cigarettes were not even allowed.